Being a writer is being a storyteller and a communicator at the heart of it. This is my first and only novel so far. A lot of growth happened in that time. It was a very humbling experience. Knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and seeing where your skill set ends and where you still have to keep building those skills. The story kind of controls you after a while. I didn't feel like I had full control over how the story turned out. I started Glitched the very first chapter when I was in my freshman year of college. The main character revolves around a girl named Kashmir who grew up in an Arab imitation city. She doesn't know that she, in fact, is a NPC who has been reset and put in the story with memories that were programmed into her already. And that the world that she was in was a world that was meant to be invaded and destroyed as part of a video game. It wasn't until 2021 that I made the decision that, unless I consciously say I will devote this amount of time every day to working on the book, it's not going to get done. I love hearing stories, just like my grandparents told me stories growing up. In many ways, they were more like my parents than my own parents. My parents, they were always so busy working, and they were working out issues with their own identities and what they wanted out of life. So they provided us the material things we needed to live, but my grandparents were more there to help nurture our minds and pass on culture. They love to talk about what life was like in China and Vietnam. A lot of Chinese myths and folklore that they thought were fun to pass on. A lot of storytelling. Even though I was born and raised here, because my grandparents didn't speak a lot of English, and I grew up with them a lot while my parents were at work. When I started school, I didn't speak a lot of English myself. So in order to make up for and help me catch up to my peers in English fluency, I went to ESL and read a lot of books. That was when I turned to books a lot to help guide me. I think that around the time I was 12, by then I had read many books, and I had this thought that, I have stories too, and it'll be interesting to show people what I see in my head. I finished the first draft before I left the company I was working at the time, and once I finished that first draft, I decided to take a little break from my career to focus on writing for a few months to see where I can take it, where I can go, what I can learn from it. I was excited, every day I was writing, but I was also very nervous and full of self-doubt for sure, because I was not just measuring up my writing and my drafts towards books that I've read or movies that I've watched, but I was also measuring up against the finished product and the vision that I had in my head for my own book. And so when you have a vision of what you want to build, oftentimes what you actually build deviates from that. And that can be a bit of a shock, especially for a first-time writer. I was less nervous about how the book would be received by my family and friends and the public. I was the most nervous about how I would receive the book once it was published, and how I would continue to perceive the book when I reread it later down the road. Because this is my very first work of art, I wanted to make sure I was okay with it first before the rest of the